It's a new year, which means there's no better way to start off than by bringing up the latest gender gap. And that gender gap is in eSports. I logged onto Twitter the other day to find a trending item on the Twitter Moments tab talking about the gender gap in eSports. This article by TicToc says women are underrepresented in the eSports world. Though 45% of US gamers are female, women pro gamers are few and far between. Harassment and toxic behavior have gripped the industry for years. Now, it's worth noting that nobody really seemed to care about the gender gap in the early days of esports, when people were playing Counter-Strike 1.6 or Street Fighter in the 90s, because you couldn't really make money in esports. If you were doing it then, you were doing it purely out of passion. But now that esports are being treated more like traditional sports, you have investment from big traditional sports organizations, they have fans, they're playing in Madison Square Garden, the pro gamers are more like real athletes, they have salaries, they have sponsorship deals. Now there's this sudden interest about the gender gap in esports. But just like programming, there only seems to be an interest in these industries when they suddenly become cash cows.
Now I ain't saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke.
Now, other than the sudden interest in esports, there are 4 big points I want to address in this video. And the first one, just like the gender pay gap, revolves around how they're coming up with this number. They say 45% of gamers are women, but 45% of what? 45% of which games? Because that's a very important point. Now, oftentimes they don't really provide the sources to back up these claims, and I think this is done intentionally so, as we'll see in a minute. But the first thing I want to look at is the representation of women in gaming across a variety of different games. So if we look here, there's this article by Quantic Foundry, and just to give you guys some background, they provided a 5-minute survey, and over 270,000 gamers worldwide have taken this survey. And within this, they asked gamers to list the specific games and titles, the franchises that they were playing, and they were able to select up to 9. So if we scroll down here, we can actually see a breakdown of game genres, and we can see the percentage of gamers in each genre that are female. Now note what's up here at the top. Match 3, which we'll get to in a second, but you see things like family/farm sim. I'm guessing that's probably something like The Sims. We see stuff like casual puzzle, atmospheric exploration. They're very well represented with women. At the very top, 69%. That's a very high number. But let's go down to the bottom here. Sports, 2%. Tactical shooters, 4%. First-person shooters, 7%. MOBAs, 10%. This starts to tell us a very different story once we look at the gender breakdown within the specific genres. And the reason this is important is we can go up here and actually look at some of the games within these genres. So let's look at these top 2, Match 3 and Family/Farm Sim. So Match 3, Candy Crush Saga, Bejeweled, Farm Heroes Saga. What was the other one? Family/Farm Sim, that would be, where is it? The Sims, Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley. Hardly what you would consider esports, right? But now let's look at things like first-person shooters and MOBAs. What do we find there? So we have MOBAs right here, League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, Dota 2, StarCraft 2, all very big esports. And then where are the first-person shooters? Here we go, first-person shooters, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Battlefield 4, Halo 5, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and Team Fortress 2. What do you know? The game genres that have the smallest representation of women are also the very same game genres that are the most well represented within esports. This is why it's so important to break these numbers down across a variety of different variables, because if you just do an aggregate, you'll say, well, 45% of gamers are women, why aren't half of esports players also women? But once we actually look at the specific games, we see, oh, women are basically playing more casual games. Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, Candy Crush. They're not playing Halo and League of Legends and StarCraft 2, where all the money and all the esports focus really lives. Now, to provide some of the data on the other side, I did a little bit of digging, and most of these figures seem to be coming from the Entertainment Software Association's reports. And here we see their 2018 report with the big title here, Essential Facts. So let's take a look at some of these essential facts. We'll scroll down here, and here we see their at a glance page. And there's one big thing I want to address right off the bat. They say adult women represent a greater portion of the video game playing population than boys under 18. As if this should be like some shock. Like, who knew adult women are playing games in greater numbers than little boys? The first thing that I'm thinking there is, well, why are you comparing adult women to children? Why not compare adult women to adult men and girls to boys? Instead, they compare women, grown adult women, to little boys. Let's scroll down here and look at their breakdown. Just to be clear, what they're doing here is they're comparing 18 to 35 plus 36 to 49 plus age 50 plus to only this. They're comparing that slice, and that slice to that slice. That is their analysis. They're comparing women who are 18 until death to a small subset of boys and saying there are more women than boys. That's like saying there are more women in the world than toddlers. No shit. Notice the manipulation that they were doing here, because again, if you did an apples to apples comparison here, you see men under 18 years old is 17%, women 11%. 18 to 35, men are at 16%, women at 13%. 36 to 49-year-old, 12% to the women's 8%. And then only at age 50 plus do women finally overtake men, and it's only by 1 percentage point. So they literally took these 3 slices of the female pie, compared it to this one slice of the men's pie, as if this is a stat, as if this is a fact. This isn't an analysis. This is just a misrepresentation of data. This is just them trying to say, there are more adult women playing games than little boys. Did you know that? People go, wow, really? I had no idea. Hoping they wouldn't stop to think, wait, are you actually comparing equal demographics here? Are you comparing the same age group to the same age group? No, you're not. You're just throwing out a larger number of women compared to a smaller amount of boys and saying, look, the women are bigger. Anyone who's been alive for the past year would know that this is bullshit. Who do you hear talking about Fortnite the most? Little boys or moms? The moms might be talking about how their kids won't get off the game and how they're not doing their homework, but they're not talking about Fortnite in I can't stop playing it sense. It's little boys. But these are the kinds of facts that they try to present as if they're a fact when they're not. Somebody like Eric Weinstein would describe this as academic malpractice. That is what this is. They are distorting numbers in a way to tell a story that does not exist. And the fact that this is in a report that's published is disgusting. And just in case you think, oh, maybe this is like a little error, it just kind of slipped through the cracks, it's just 1 year, let's take a look at 2017. Again, Entertainment Software Association, 2017 Essential Facts. Let's scroll down to their at a glance section. Slightly different design, but once again, women age 18 and older represent a significantly greater portion of the game-playing population than boys under age 18. Now, the second point I want to address is this rationale, this idea that, well, because women face toxicity in esports, that's why they're not represented within esports. When the reality is that regardless of who you are, you're going to face toxicity within your field. I mean, if esports is going to become more mainstream like traditional sports, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get criticism. You're going to get analysts on ESPN who are going to sit there and talk about whether or not you should be on a team, whether or not you're doing well enough to justify your position as a professional gamer. When Josh Gordon earlier this year was traded to the New England Patriots, the coverage that I saw on shows like First Take and Undisputed was them calling Josh Gordon an alcoholic, a drug abuser, an addict, They were literally saying, can this guy hang in a team like the New England Patriots? He shows up to games drunk. He shows up to games high. Is he going to be able to make it within the New England Patriots organization, which is known as being one of the most disciplined organizations within the league? And if you follow the NFL, you'll know Josh Gordon isn't in the NFL anymore. Or take Mike McCarthy, the coach, former coach for the Green Bay Packers. This is a guy who won a Super Bowl. He has a Super Bowl ring. He was fired earlier this year in the middle of the season. And the analysis on ESPN was, this should have happened sooner. Mike McCarthy is a coach for the Green Bay Packers. He has quite possibly the greatest quarterback to ever live on his team, Aaron Rodgers, and after all these years, he has won Super Bowl. The analysis here was that Mike McCarthy should have been fired sooner, that the Green Bay Packers organization waited too long to make this decision. If that's not toxicity, if that's not criticism, I don't know what is. And my final example, Greg Jennings, who is a wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, had this story to tell on ESPN about his time with Aaron Rodgers.
I wanted to be in Green Bay.
You're a Pro Bowler.
I didn't want to leave. But our first game of the season, we're playing San Francisco, the 49ers, in Lambeau. And it's a timeout. Carlos Rogers, corner, comes up to me. He's playing with the 49ers. He's like, man, what's going on, man? Why aren't they getting you the ball? Why they got you running these little simple routes? And I'm like, I don't know, man. You know how I go. When you contract year, you don't know what's going on. Aaron is right here. He's kind of listening to the conversation. He says, you guys should get him after this year. You guys should try to get him. I look like, what? Like, this is the first game of the season. And my guy is already pretty much passed me along.
Now imagine hearing that 2 years after you won a Super Bowl, the first game of the season, you're out on the field with your teammate, and he tells the opposition, hey, you guys should pick him up after this year. You don't think that hurts? You don't think that sucks to hear your teammate tell that to you right in front of your face? And we're only hearing about this 2 years later. Greg Jennings retired in 2016. We just heard this story in 2018. Look, I'm not saying that because men in the NFL or men in other sports face toxicity that it's okay. All I'm saying is that you shouldn't think that this problem is uniquely specific to you because of your gender. Just because Greg Jennings didn't talk about it didn't mean it wasn't happening. There's drama. There's politics within sports. This is their job. You don't think they're on the field saying, man, this guy just isn't pulling his weight. Or somebody on the New England Patriots saying, wait, we just picked up a drug addict? Are you fucking kidding me? You don't think this exists? Regardless of whether it's traditional sports or eSports, if you can't face criticism, if some toxicity from some random people online or even from your own teammates is what's going to stop you from becoming a professional gamer or a professional athlete, you're not cut out for it. Now, my next point kind of relates to some anecdotes, but also some memes that exist within gaming itself. The first one being the anecdotes. I knew people growing up when I was playing World of Warcraft. I knew guys who played World of Warcraft, and they would intentionally play as a girl character and literally pretend to be a girl in the game because they would get more free shit in the game from guys. There are guys out there who are so thirsty, who are so desperate for female attention, that just by being a female avatar in a game like World of Warcraft, they would get free stuff. The guys would buy them mounts. They'd give them free gold. They'd give them rare items. Like, all it took was being a girl, but supposedly you face nothing but toxicity within gaming. My other point kind of relates to some memes and jokes that exist within gaming, specifically Counter-Strike. If you've played Counter-Strike Global Offensive, you're probably familiar with this clip.
A lot of assists.
Kind of
Can I have a drop, please? Oh my god. Thank you.
Now, I just want to point out there, when they dropped an AWP, an AK, and an M4. She literally had her pick of the 3 best guns in the game. Now, whenever I'm playing Counter-Strike and I ask for a drop, I usually don't get one unless I'm with a really good team and they realize, hey, we're all in this together. We need everybody to be geared up. But usually they just kind of tell me to fuck off. But whenever there's a girl on the team, miraculously, all of a sudden guys are willing to sacrifice their own money, sacrifice their own guns to drop for a girl. And here's a couple more clips.
Yo, they fucking nade stacked me there. My asshole.
What's Bunny Hunt?
Can you buy me
Guys.
a M4?
Yeah, I'll buy you an op.
Oh.
Oops.
Oh, what?
Just got like bukkake and guns. Yo, Larry!
Just throw guns. Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing. Just got bukkake and guns.
Hey, does anybody have any ammo?
Now, the point being that why would these clips be funny if they weren't true? If you couldn't relate to them in any way, why would the clips be funny? Why would people share this as a hilarious clip if there wasn't some truth to it? Now, another point worth addressing if we're going to be on the topic of gender gaps in esports is that there also is quite a big racial gap. If you follow games like StarCraft or if you followed Overwatch, you'll notice that South Koreans and Asians in general tend to dominate. Asians tend to dominate pretty much any esport they seem to focus their attention on, StarCraft being the most notable example. But if gender representation is a problem, why isn't racial representation a problem? But the thing is, esports are about as meritocratic as you can possibly get. Unlike traditional sports like basketball, where there's a big genetic advantage if you're 7 feet tall. I mean, if you're under 6 feet, good luck. There are big advantages. There are big genetic advantages in traditional sports. In esports, not so much. You're usually just playing on a controller or a mouse and keyboard. The gap between individuals, the gap that is based on genetics or some sort of physical advantage, is so much smaller than it is within traditional sports, yet we're still seeing a pretty big racial gap in performance, most notably amongst Asians. The other point worth addressing here related to equality of opportunity is that this is also the most equality of opportunity women could possibly get. In fact, the equality of opportunity is actually skewed more towards women than it is towards men. Because in esports, there's no such thing as a men's-only tournament. There just is no such thing. There are tournaments, and then there are women's-only tournaments. So if you want to talk about the potential prize pool that could be earned, it is objectively, provably in the favor of women. Because women can not only compete in the open tournament, they're not men's only, just the tournaments. They could win that and then go on to win the women's only tournaments. Men can't go compete in those tournaments. So the amount of possible earnings available is actually greater for women in esports than it is for men. We see similar things in something like chess. You can't really make the argument that there's some sort of physical advantage with a game like chess because it's a board and all you have to do is move pieces on the board. Yet when you look at the highest performers, the world champs year after year, they're usually men. They're not women. And this brings me to my final and what will quite probably be the most controversial point I make, and it's that elite levels skewing towards one gender or another isn't necessarily a sign of exclusion or toxicity or trying to keep women out of gaming. It might just be the natural state of affairs. What I want to do now is take a look at what I believe are 3 of the most successful women to ever compete in esports. And what I'm going to do is start with the video games that I'm least familiar with and then move towards the games that I'm most familiar with. So the first person we're going to start with is Remelia. Remelia is somebody who plays League of Legends. Again, this isn't a game I'm super familiar with, but familiar enough to at least make this point. Remelia, as you can see here, United States, 23 years old, plays League of Legends, and if you scroll down to tournament results, you'll see that she played in the NALCS in 2016. Now, again, I'm not super familiar with League of Legends, but I do know that if you make it to the NALCS, you're legit. It's like if you make it to the NFL, even if you're the worst player in the NFL, you still made it to the NFL. You're legit as fuck. And even though in the 2016 NALCS they placed 8th, still, Remelia played for Renegades, made it to the NALCS. As far as I'm concerned, Remelia is legit as fuck. Now, the second person I want to cover, Ricky Ortiz. Ricky Ortiz is a woman within the fighting game community. Again, I'm not super into fighting games. I kind of tune in around EVO whenever it's like basically the Olympics, the Super Bowl of the fighting game community. But let's scroll down here and look at some of the achievements. As you can see, there's some pretty high placing tournaments here. The most recent one, second at the Capcom Cup in 2016. We see down here at EVO 2007, second place, EVO 2006, second place. I mean, these are big tournaments, high placings, and even for somebody like me that isn't super familiar with the fighting game community, when I click something like the Capcom Cup 2016 and I look at the names, I see Daigo Umehara, I see Takedo, I see Momochi, I see Knuckle-Doo, Justin Wong. I see names that I know are legit as hell within this community. Those people on any given day can win a tournament like this, and Ricky Ortiz finished second place. Once again, as far as I'm concerned, based on my knowledge of the fighting game community, Ricky Ortiz is legit as fuck. And finally, Scarlett, one of the great StarCraft 2 players. She played Zerg from Canada, 25 years old, and again, is one of the most accomplished women to ever play StarCraft, one of the most accomplished people to ever play StarCraft. One of the most notable things to point out here was that, let me look it up, Scarlett, in the 2018 GSL Season 1, she made the quarterfinals. Now, this is notable because a foreigner has only ever made it to the quarterfinals in the GSL one other time. And as you can see here, that was Naniwa in 2012. This has only happened 2 times, and one of the times it was Scarlett, who's a woman. This is something that just doesn't happen. Koreans dominate StarCraft so much that for a foreigner to make it to the quarterfinals, the top 8 in GSL, that is a huge accomplishment, and they've never made it farther than that. So Naniwa did it once, and then Scarlett did it once. Huge accomplishment. As far as I'm concerned, Scarlett is legit as fuck. Now, why do I bring these women up, and what is the point that I'm making here? Well, all 3 of those women are trans. They are all trans. And in a field like gaming, we see the same pattern emerge that we see in traditional sports. You never see in traditional sports, a sport like rugby, football, or basketball, you never see a woman transition to a man and then dominate the sport that they're in. But we've seen stories of men transitioning to women and dominating the sport that they're in. Similarly, in eSports, we have yet to see a woman transition to a man and dominate esports, but we have 3 notable examples. Again, I'm classifying them honestly and genuinely as legit as fuck. We have seen 3 men transition to women and do very well in esports. And I think it's fair to say that by all objective measures, whether you're liberal, conservative, libertarian, religious, non-religious, whatever you are, that we could pretty much agree that if you're trans, you're going to face more stigma in society. You're going to face more toxicity than a cis woman. Yet somehow, Remelia, Ricky Ortiz, and Scarlett, despite the narrative of the industry being toxic towards women, being trans gamers, they've made it to the highest levels. How do you reconcile these 2 things? How do you say that women can't make it in esports when we have 3 great examples? And they're not, again, I've classified them as legit as fuck. They've made it to the highest levels despite being trans. How do you reconcile that narrative when I think pretty much everybody can agree that trans people are going to face way more stigma and way more toxicity for being trans than a cis woman will in esports? Now, just in case anybody out there is going to accuse me of being transphobic in some way, I just wanted to show you this mouse pad that I have here. As you can see, there are quite a few signatures on it, and right up here, I'm not sure if you can read that, but that says Scarlet. A few years ago, in I think it was like 2013, 2012, I went to IPL 5 in Las Vegas, and I went there to watch StarCraft. And one of the things I did was bring my mouse pad with me because I wanted some of my favorite StarCraft players to sign my mouse pad. And one of those was Scarlet. Now, when I first started watching StarCraft, I didn't know Scarlet was trans. I thought she was just like a socially awkward girl. Then I found out she was trans, and guess what? I don't care. I don't care that she's trans. Her being trans has nothing to do with me being a fan of her. I cared that she was a good player, that she was doing well, and that she was a foreigner that had the chance, the possibility to dethrone the Koreans in a sport, in a game that was so dominated by Koreans. It was nice to see somebody that could potentially win a GSL. So when I was at IPL 5 in Las Vegas and I saw Scarlet, I ran her down and I asked her, "Do you mind signing my mouse pad?" And she did, and I thanked her for it. Being trans has nothing to do with whether or not I'm going to be a fan with you. But just because you're trans, it doesn't mean that you're going to stop me from providing what I believe is an honest and thorough analysis of women and representation in esports. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you have any comments for me or any sort of feedback, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. And unlike some of the people who provide some of these reports, all of my sources are below, so feel free to look through them. And if my interpretation of any of these numbers or statistics was wrong, again, please feel free to let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.